essentially, at Elsevier, along with Wageningen University, we wanted to look at this topic, and we basically were trying to look at, is this really endemic? And when we started talking about it, we mentioned Lance Armstrong quite a lot. We were like, okay, is this something that's like doping in cycling, or is this just mostly a few really dodgy people? Which is it? And as you can see, we both have, both myself and my colleague Jeroen, who's in our analytics department, we both have conflicts of interest here because, of course, you know, journals may not want to find out that there's a ton of citation litigation going on, and Jeroen works on products like Cyval and Scopus, which of course rely a lot on citations. He probably wouldn't want to hear that either, so you know, those are our conflicts of interest, and you can judge the data yourself. We worked on this very much at the, very much inspired by and supported by Wageningen University. And the reason for that is, as some of you may have noticed by now, there's a bit of a pattern with the Dutch. When something goes wrong in the Netherlands, the Dutch pragmatism kicks in. It's a wonderful thing, and they want to look at it, they want to analyze it, and they want to figure out how to prevent it and what to do about it. So I'll come back to this in a sec. So I don't need to tell you about metrics and how they can be gamed, and every metric can be gamed, and they all have their limitations, and you all know this. So let's just take that as right. So you may or may not know of this case. If you don't, I invite you to read about it on Retraction Watch. It's quite a soap opera. It's a case of citation manipulation on a large scale by someone who was a reviewer and an editor in many, many journals in soil science, and massively increased his page index, his journal's impact factors, his friends' page indexes, you name it. And there may or may not have been a cartel involved, we don't really know, etc. I want to, because we talk a lot about the bad actors, so I want to also talk about, maybe for a change, the really positive actors. And this is Jan Willem van Groeningen, who's also in Wageningen. It's very big in soil science, so they sort of inevitably were sort of affected by this whole issue. He's also the editor-in-chief of Geoderma. And he and Geoderma, they were not really very deeply involved in the case, but they took it extremely seriously. The main actor, Serda, was on the board. They very quickly looked at it, made a statement about it, and then eventually they decided to not allow this author to publish in their journal. They wrote an editorial about it, which is on Retraction Watch and so on. You can read about that. Sorry, I should put this. But so, in case you're not familiar with this, if you're really lucky, you're not familiar with it because it's slightly horrifying. So, citation manipulation is essentially when, during the peer review process, a reviewer or an editor takes advantage of their role to encourage, coerce, gently, whatever you want, depending on the situation, the authors to add citations to the reviewer's papers, the editor's papers, their friends' papers, their journal's papers, whatever. It's all citation manipulation. Citation pushing is when it's to their own papers. Citation stacking is when it's to the journal's papers. You can have citation cartels, and it's not always coercion, but I can tell you I've seen a few cases where it really was nasty, nasty stuff. It was really coercion. What happened after this case was essentially that, believe it or not, sorry, this is in Dutch, but this is one of the national newspapers in the Netherlands, and Wageningen actually, as far as you can see, basically probably went to the newspaper and told them this terrible story, and one of their faculty was involved. They're not named, but it's a pretty explicit story about the citation saga. Not many countries where you'd have a story like this in the national newspaper, but Wageningen sort of calls for journals to do more, publishers to do more. So we reached out to Wageningen, and we started working together, and we started talking about, okay, what can we do? And we looked at what we can do, and we looked at what we can't do. And maybe what's more interesting for everyone here, I really encourage everyone to think about and contact us and collaborate on, is the things we can't do, which is kind of worrying. So what can we do? So what Elsevier said we can do is, okay, we can make it really, really clear to everybody that this is not acceptable, right? And bearing in mind these citations that are erroneous, irrelevant, they're really only there for the sake of stacking someone's CV. They're not relevant to the article, right? If they're relevant to the article, it might actually be a positive thing, right? It might be preventing somebody from inadvertently plagiarizing, so that's fine. So make it clear to everyone. So we added this to all our standard reviewer instructions, the message the reviewer gets when they agree to review. We added it to our reviewer guidelines. We put it in our editor, well, we put it quite some years ago actually, in our editor agreements, like legally, contractually, they're obliged not to behave in this kind of way. When we catch someone, we take away the reviewer privileges, we take them off our boards, we warn editors, we warn publishers, we cancel special issues, we inform their institutes, Ideally, we'd inform the funding bodies. So those are the things we can do. Crucially, I think, the main thing that we cannot do right now, there is no real mechanism to do, is we cannot retract the citations. So the previous case we talked about, and someone who's been, doing this at scale and, very well known, very well documented. As far as I know, he's never had an article retracted, right? And you can't retract his citations. So in 10 or 20 years' time, how is anyone going to know that these citations are not relevant and are illicit citations? Because we don't have a way of retracting citations, right? And for journals, that's frustrating. It's frustrating for the community. And of course, we know retracting articles, it's not there to punish authors, right? We know that. But at the same time, it does have a side effect, that it does have kind of a warning to the community that this person has misbehaved in the past and maybe at scale. And in these cases, we don't have any way to do that. We have no way to really punish them. If we have no way to really punish them, which I'm sorry, I know it's not about punishment, but that means, what exactly is the disincentive to not try it? Because what happens when you get caught is not that much, I'm afraid, in some cases. So what we looked at, this is very high level because we don't have time, and also Jeroen is the analyst, so he's written a paper on the far more details. So we started with all our reviewers essentially for 2 years. And then we decided we'll only look at people who've reviewed at least 5 papers and have written more than 5 papers, because we wanted to look at distribution. So if the numbers are too small, it's a bit pointless. So we got to about 55,000 reviewers. And essentially based on our rather arbitrary cutoff points, and you can apply your own cutoff points, we basically found that most people were not doing this. And at this point, all we're looking at is their citations in Scopus and the papers they reviewed and matching the two together. So all we're looking at is, was this person cited in a paper they reviewed? That's it, right? We have not looked at the reviewer report. We have not looked at the submission. We're just looking at the high-level data. And from that, we did this kind of overall, how many are in the bandwidth that you think, yeah, this is probably fine? How many are like, maybe we need to look at it? And how many are just, it's implausible? In more than 90% of their citations come from papers they reviewed, right? Where it's highly implausible this is innocent, right? So we have limitations, right? We only know about what people did for Elsevier. That's a limitation, of course. Unpublished submissions are a dreadful thing to be trying to do anything with because they're unstructured, they're untagged. Luckily for us, we have a system of tagging, linking citations in manuscripts, so we're able to do that, but it doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't work for LaTeX, for example. So some limitations. You'd probably think, why don't we just look at the reviewer reports? But reviewer reports are unstructured, they're not always stored very well, and most importantly, we don't own them, the reviewer owns them, so I don't know if we give them the right to go analyzing them. And profiles. People have many profiles, and dishonest people have many, many, many profiles, as some of you know. So this is all very hard to do, and took our analysts a long time to do, but let's just simplify. Essentially, author profiles from Scopus, reviewer records from the editorial system. This is a stick figure, not a stick man, by the way, let's be clear about that. And then we link the records together. So we're basically looking for what we call reviewer citations, which is a citation to the reviewer in a paper they reviewed. And that's what we analyzed. So we looked at this distribution, and basically what we're looking for is people who are, people who are outside the norm. So we got to, what was it, about 1,000, I think, people that were in the sort of upper limit. Yeah, so we got to about 1,000 people. So that's purely from their citations. We haven't looked at when the citation got into the paper. Some editors choose reviewers from the citation list. So it could be completely innocent, right? Yeah, so then we looked at smaller group, because this is a bit where it gets difficult. You need a lot of data, and it's hard to manage it, so we did it with about 1,000. Thanks. And then we got into okay, who are the most suspicious ones? So essentially, what we came to was, I think in the end it was 49 people, wasn't it? 49 people that we said okay, these are essentially now kind of our hit list, not in a kind of mafia way, but these are the people we're really going to focus on. Thankfully, most people were hardly doing it at all, which is good news, right? I mean, so a few people that are doing a spectacular level, most people not doing it all. And we're going to just mention this guy, who's one of our favorites. Is that the right word, Miha? No, not favorites. One case, which is a highly frustrating case, and editors furious about this, publishers furious, we're furious, because we're just not able to do much with this person. huge hate index. We know that their citations are largely dodgy. They do also other dodgy things also when they submit papers as an author. They don't care. They're totally unrepentant. They say, oh, all these citations were relevant. These were the most important citations, had to be added, blah, blah, blah. Institute doesn't care, they don't respond, there's no funding body. And there's no record of this. And that's the most frustrating part, there's no real record of this because we don't have a way to do that. So what I'd like to go back to again is like, these are the things we can do, and the things that we figured out we can do, we're happy to share, but I think we also need to work together. If only, I know it's a small number of people, but it is very frustrating and it kind of makes a mockery of everything in a way, if we cannot do something to make a record of this and correct it.